Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Good Cube Sundays on Good Cube Kitchen. I'm your host, Yassine Butler, and I'm super excited to share with you what we made today. So, this is what I call a crossover episode. What is a crossover episode? I'm glad you asked. A crossover episode is basically a leftovers episode. So, I had leftover butterscotch with those little crunchies in it. I had leftover sweet potatoes, and I had leftover cookie dough from last week's episode. All of these things came together to make the ultimate cookie sandwich. This right here is fit for a king. Let me show you how to make it for your kingdom. First, we're going to make our standard gelato recipe: 2 1/4 cup of milk. To that, we're going to add over 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. And we're also going to add over some corn syrup. Now, I'm tweaking my corn syrup recipe, and I'll probably be tweaking it over the next couple of weeks because I want to get the perfect balance between flavor and scoopability when it freezes. This week, we're going to add over about 3 ounces of corn syrup to the custard. The next part of the process is to make up our cornstarch slurry. Now, the best advice for making cornstarch slurry is to use a thin liquid like milk or water. Unfortunately, I did not do that. I used heavy cream, so I got a really thick slurry. And that is okay. That simply means you have to whisk extra hard. So I'm going to combine about 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream with my cornstarch, which is 2 tablespoons. I'm going to whisk that together, then combine it into my custard. Remember that your cornstarch is your thickening agent for the custard. While our custard is coming up, I'm going to scoop out our cookies. And I'm using a 3 1/4 ounce scoop to make a nice large cookie. If you're making a cookie sandwich, you don't want it to be wimpy. You want a nice large one. And I'm going to flatten the top so that when it rises, it doesn't rise too high. You want your cookie to be able to sit flat on the table or whatever surface you're plating it on. I'm going to put it into my preheated 350-degree oven and let it bake for about 8 to 12 minutes, depending on how well calibrated your oven is. Now we're going to temper our egg. So I'm going to take the scalding base for our custard and I'm going to whisk in just a little bit of milk to temper it. Now combining our egg yolk that has been tempered into our custard base. Give it a good whisk. And now, as you know, the last part of making this is simply stirring for about 10 to 12 minutes constantly. What you're looking for is these beautiful wakes to begin to form. Once the custard is thick enough to form the after image of the wakes that you were creating with the spoon, you know that your custard is thick enough and ready to be cooled. Because I want an exceptionally thick custard for my ice cream base, I'm going to continue to stir it off of the heat so that I can increase the evaporation before cooling. Our cookies have developed a beautiful golden brown, and the extra 1/4 cup of flour that I put into this base allowed them to have a nice rise and thickness to them. Now they're going to be nice and crispy on the outside, but still very cakey and soft on the inside. So I'm going to take them out of the oven and allow them to cool overnight. It is the next morning. I've allowed everything to cool. I put the custard in a bowl and then I placed a piece of cling wrap directly on the surface. That way a skin wouldn't form. The custard is nice and thick, and I'm going to pour it into the ice cream maker. Coming back to take a peek at the 15-minute mark, and boy, is that thick. That's probably thick with about 4 C's. And this is the perfect time to try to do something new, which is mix-ins. So I'm going to take some of my butterscotch candy syrup combination, and I'm going to put it in and allow the churning to just mix it up. And as you can see, the centrifugal force of the spinning is already mixing it down. You can see all those globs of crunchy candy. The next mix-in is actually going to be the leftover candy yams. I'm so excited for this idea. I hadn't tried it before, and I was like, wow, that's probably going to be perfect. And so, here you go, crossover episode achieved. As a mix-in, yams are very thick, so I'm going to have to take my spatula and force it down to make sure that it gets nice and mixed in there. That's probably thick with 6 C's. I allowed my ice cream to chill out in the freezer for about 4 hours, and now it's time to plate. One thing you'll notice is that I put a piece of bread in the container that I house the cookies. And that's important because the bread will more quickly suck up additional moisture, which will ruin the consistency of your cookies if you allow it to. So now that my cookies are ready, you could hear the nice crisp, hard exterior, but there's still a bit of a softness. So I'm going to give myself a nice big scoop or 2 of ice cream. And now to close the sandwich. You can see the amount of resistance that the ice cream is giving. That just lets you know that it is nice, thick, creamy. So, there you have it. A butterscotch candied yam chocolate chip cookie sandwich made for a king or at least 3 people. I'm going to enjoy it by myself, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Good Cube Sunday. Thank you so much for joining me. Please follow me on all social media platforms. That's Good Cubed, GOODCUB3D on all social media platforms. And always thank the good Lord for good food and good times. All that good is Good Cubed. Have a good one.
I'm a god, no matter what I measure, when it hits the spot. I'm slaying demons, y'all cannot enslave me, I'm a star. The power that I feel is so addictive from the start. Shout out to the Reaper and the Fallen for the drive.